When you look back at your career, what were some of the big hurdles you had to overcome or challenges you navigated?
I think the biggest was not having a role model, a mentor who looked like me, who I could talk to. All of my counterparts at the time and everyone around me was male. And you probably know this, Kristi, but I can't say the same thing that a guy can and have it be taken the same way. It
No.
comes across very differently. And I have to navigate the world in a different way because of that. And so it
Yeah.
was a struggle for me. And I spent a lot of time in my head worried about how I present myself, wearing the black suit and trying to fit into what I saw around me, until I became comfortable enough to understand that the power and the superpowers that I had were also tied not only to me as a revenue leader, but to the fact that I was female.
Welcome to the She's So Sweet podcast, where we interview accomplished women who have worked their way to the C-suite. I'm your host, Kristi Faltorusso, Chief Customer Officer and award-winning customer success executive. I'm really excited to introduce our guest today. I've got Shannon Plumb, who is the CEO and founder of Purl Advisors. Shannon, welcome to our show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're so excited to get into your story. So before we do that, let's lay some foundation for our listeners. Let's tell them who you are, what you do, give us some context, and why you're here.
Absolutely. So 25-year career in customer facing roles, most recently as Chief Revenue Officer, and in tech has been my background. I live in Boulder, Colorado, and I absolutely love talking about all things tech, all things revenue, and empowerment.
So tell me about your firm. So what does Purl Advisors do?
Purl Advisors is an advisory firm that helps CEOs, founders, and leaders navigate the unknowns of business, which, as we all know, is just about every single day. Yeah. So I use my 25 years of pattern recognition to help them get to quick answers quickly and focus, because life is so distracting. And if we're not spending time in the right places, we very quickly get overwhelmed and don't make a meaningful impact in our businesses. And that is my specialty.
Oh, I love that. All right. Very good. Okay. Well, listen, I'm going to start asking what I ask everybody when we kick off. But Shannon, when as far back as you can remember, when you think back to little Shannon, what did you want to be when you were younger?
I always wanted to be a ballerina.
Okay. So now you're going to have to take me far back and where did that come from? And then how did we end up here?
So when I was 2, my mom actually enrolled me in ballet classes. It was a doctor's recommendation. She said, you can either put her legs in splints or you can enroll her in ballet. And my mom was like,
okay.
Ballet, here she comes. So I started at 2 years old. And before I knew it, I was 14 and dancing professionally. I spent my entire life growing up dancing ballet and training. And then I actually left high school early and went and danced professionally at BalletMet, which is in Columbus, Ohio, in order to fulfill that dream.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, you know that we still have a gap here, because now I'm trying to figure out how you went from dancing professionally to now doing what you're doing here at your advisory firm. So what happened with this ballet career?
Yeah, so I was dedicated so much of my life to it. In fact, I wasn't allowed to do anything else growing up just because of the dedication. Not allowed to ice skate, to ski, to be in the sun. It was a very focused, dedicated, passionate, lifestyle and obsession, if you will, growing up. And I really dedicated my entire self to it. Well, when I was dancing professionally, I actually fractured my foot. And so fracturing my foot forced me to take about a year off. And during that year, I was meant to sit on the sidelines and observe. And I started to realize there was so much more to life that I had missed growing up, and getting interested in college and boys and friendships and all the things that I did not do because I was so dedicated to ballet growing up. And I tried to go back after my foot healed, and it just never felt the same. It was incredibly painful to this day. I still have pain. Oh, wow. And so I decided to take a different path and to explore my other options. I ended up going to college.
Wow. Okay. So I want to click on a few things here, because that is a crazy story, right? Because people usually stop doing something out of choice, right? Like this, you were kind of forced to make a change. And obviously the realization of a different life came out of that time off. I mean, looking back, is there regrets? Is there sadness? Is there grief? I mean, that was your entire identity for a good portion of your life. It was who you were, literally. I mean, how did you as a person navigate that transition coming out of that and redefining who you are and building a new life for yourself?
I think what you just said is so important, which is it was my entire identity. And that is so true. Everyone knew me as the dancer, from my friends in grade school all the way to every single relative. Every gift I got was focused around ballet, and every moment I had in my life was focused around dancing. And so coming out of that, I feel like I lived my teens and my 20s and my 30s, my 30s and my 40s. Like I'm just about a decade behind when it comes to exploring who I am. I really had to start over and figure out who I was and what else I liked. What were some of my other passions? And honestly, it's a journey that I'm still on and still identifying like what makes me because of that experience. Now, it gave me a lot of great things, and I wouldn't say there's anything I regret. I believe everything happens for a reason, Kristi, and I think that it gave me such dedication, passion, resilience, grit, all the things that being a C-suite female executive are require of you. I mean, I was singularly focused, driven, all of those things. But at the same time, I did miss out a lot on growing up and what it means to be a high schooler and what it means to go to prom and all of the things that you get to experience that make you who you are as an adult. I just feel like I experienced those a little bit later.
Okay. So no regrets. You've still had experiences. You just had them on a different timeline than most, it sounds like. Right.
I did.
Okay. Very good. Okay. So now we get to a point where college is now something that we're interested in pursuing. Where did you go? What did you do?
I went to the Ohio State University, and trying to figure out what I wanted to do was quite a journey. Again, no basis in thinking about college, because I always thought I was going to be a professional ballet dancer, and maybe like in some distant future I might get a degree, but there was never a passion. There was never anything academically that I said I have to do this. So I spent a lot of time exploring. I think I had 4 or 5 majors, up to the point where my parents said, you're just going to need to decide on something and pick it. I did everything from physical therapy, because I thought that had a tie-in with ballet, and I had done a lot of physical therapy when I was dancing, just to recover and recoup from injuries. I did all of my volunteer hours and decided this is very repetitive, and I'm a person who loves a lot of variety, so I'm not going to do this. I actually ended up just kind of throwing caution to the wind and applying for interior design school and getting in, and said, I guess I'm going to do this. So I actually have a degree in interior design.
Do you use that?
Personally, yes. I think I think that it really, it has impacted how I present myself. It has impacted my look and like how I curate outfits and how I think about presentation from a design standpoint. If you think about PowerPoints and one-pagers and all the things, there are a lot of people that do not have the skill set in order to design collateral needed for business. I think it's hugely impacted me there. I can pick up and do all of my own design without a problem. I think it's also impacted my personal brand and how I present myself, how I kind of curate my look, which I think is a huge part of how we represent ourselves,
absolutely,
both digitally as well as in the boardroom.
Absolutely. All right. So now we graduate. We have this degree that we were not pursuing a career in necessarily. Where did we go work? What happened from there?
So I went to a career fair on campus, and
that makes total sense.
And I was walking around, and WorldCom, Unit Technologies, was there. And I walked up to them and I said, I'm graduating. I have a degree in interior design, and here's why you should hire me. My pitch to them was that I have had over the last 4 years to convince everybody that the ideas I'm presenting them for their space, which is arguably one of the most personal things because you live in it, you experience it, it colors everything that you feel about your environment and what you think, that I have been able to communicate those ideas incredibly clearly and convince people that the space that I had created not only checks all their boxes, but will be a great environment for them to work in. And I was doing commercial interior design, I should note, not residential interior design.
Okay.
So it was more like hospitals, hospitality, restaurants. And so that was my pitch to them, and they said, you know what, we think we could take a chance on you. And they hired me on the spot, and I started a few weeks later.
And what was your first job?
I was an account executive for Unionet or WorldCom. It was a Fortune 3 company at the time. And I was calling on clients like Bank of America, Volvo, and Novartis in enterprise sales, and was selling data connectivity. So T3s, T5s at the time, when data centers were big, and we were talking about the actual technology and hardware that was used to connect the internet.
Okay, how did you do in sales? I mean, obviously, you're sitting in the role that you are, so I'm sure you didn't do that bad. But like, what was the experience? Because you hadn't sold before. It wasn't what you went to school for.
No.
So, like, how did you take to this? And like, what did you think when you started doing it? Were you immediately like, yes, this is for me. I'm so good at it and I love the money? Or it was like, was it a tough transition coming from your previous experiences and your educational background?
Very easy transition. Actually, I felt like I took a fish to water. It was very natural.
Oh, I love that.
But I think what made it so natural is that for the first year of my career there, they put me in an intense education where about 50 of us from around the country that were hired at the same time were flown from city to city around the country. And a week a month, we took in-depth sales training. So everything from elevator pitches, how do you negotiate, how do you demonstrate value? And it was a very regimented program and also very holistic program. So I think that really gave me a strong basis. Plus it connected me with other new sellers, a lot of who had gone to college for it, but people that have been incredibly successful in the world of business and work for unicorns all over the globe were part of that program. So it was a really great basis for my entire career. And honestly, this was the only company that I've ever worked for that had sales training of that caliber, as well as the only large organization I've ever worked for. But it gave me a great understanding of how to navigate and a lot of education, which was helpful.
So it's so interesting that you talk about that because it's something you don't see often any longer, right? Where these large corporations used to make huge investments in like training and management programs and all of these things to groom their employees to grow with them over time, right? I mean, they saw it as an investment and they were making it 10x. And nowadays, it's like you can't even get budget for a $500 online course from companies that you work for.
It is such a juxtaposition from how it used to be. And it's unfortunate that that's gone away because I definitely think that training and coaching is a huge area in need of investment for companies. And they always assume that somebody else will do it. And so that's why I think we could probably talk about this more, but that females and individuals in general, but especially females, have to invest in their own education, their own coaching, their own training, and seek that out. I was lucky enough to get it and get taste of it early on, but I definitely have had to make an effort and an investment in that in my career.
I mean, to your point, I think everyone needs to make that investment. Yes, we do in particular. We could talk about this later, but I definitely think that, like, even how people are using their free time now with AI, I mean, like, if you're not spending some amount of time every day learning and educating yourself around this and the disruption to your space, whatever space that's in, I think it's a huge disservice, right? So it's just that continued education that I think is so critical for all of us. Okay, let's take a step back here because I want to talk about your career path. Obviously, it's been interesting. We started to talk about how you broke in. Now we know how you started. And obviously, you talked about this 25-year journey, which is super impressive. Now, as you reflect back on that journey, what were some of the real big pivotal moments or big decisions that you feel contributed to like your ascent to the role that you're in now?
So I think the first one was deciding to follow my passion for the location that I lived. So when I was working for WorldCom, I was living in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I decided I didn't resonate with the people, the environment. I was looking for something that felt more like home. And so without knowing anyone and without a job, I moved out to Boulder, Colorado. And I think that was the first really big pivot. It was both prioritizing where I wanted to live and the lifestyle that I wanted to achieve over anything else. And fought really hard to stay here for the last 24 years and, create a friendship support system. We don't have any family here. So that was probably the very big first pivotal moment for me. Moved out with my then boyfriend, now husband, and have loved living here. But that was the entry into understanding that there was a lot of opportunity in this thing called SaaS. or software as a service. So I remember the day that I heard someone talking about it. I was driving down 36, which is the main highway that goes between Boulder and Denver. And I think it was even on the radio. And somebody was talking about tech startups in Boulder, Colorado, which has been a hotbed for tech startups for a long time behind Silicon Valley. They used to call it Silicon Flatirons. And I go, this sounds like it's the way of the future. I should figure out how to get into tech. I had taken a side road when I moved to Colorado because we didn't have jobs. And so I took whatever job I could get. And that looked like a little bit of retail management. It looked like a job at the newspaper back when that was a thing, selling ads in the newspaper to local businesses. So I had taken a real deviation and even done some director of marketing for a local retail shop. And I was like, this is not the path I want to be on. How can I get on a path where I can see career growth? And SaaS seemed like the entry point of that for me. So I ended up getting into technology through a connection. I think the best opportunities are often from referrals, and who you know is very, very important.
Yes,
and it was somebody who was working for a hardware software business selling into the government. And that was really my first, I think, real role here in Colorado that set me on the trajectory to the C-suite and a career that was based in technology. And so I feel lucky to have found that. And that was really my second pivotal moment.
That's so interesting. Okay, so we have different entry points into SaaS because I was less deliberate about it. I actually, when I started my career in SaaS, I didn't even know what SaaS stood for, if I'm being very honest. So mine was completely accidental. What were the things that you noticed were significantly different? Because when you started your career and you're doing sales, it was very much in the data centers, and you've probably got hardware and stuff like that. What did you see as the big difference as you kind of moved into the SaaS world?
The reason I was drawn to it was because of opportunity. I knew that I wanted to stay in Colorado, and I saw that there were a lot of job opportunities. So for me, it was a place, and this was back before remote work was a thing. So you had to live where you work. And the threat of having to move for me was intense. I did not want to have to leave this place that I had found.
Okay, you're just like, this is home. That's it. We have to figure it out and make it work.
Figure it out. We're going to figure out a way to stay here.
Love it. You're like, I'll build my own SaaS company.
So that was the first thing. But really the difference was the recurring revenue model is the huge difference. And just thinking about how do you sell something once and then service them in a way that keeps them as a repeat customer. And I had seen that. So I had been in hardware, obviously, with WorldCom. I had been in a hardware software solution with a company called Casecracker, which sold investigative interview equipment to the Air Force, Army, and law enforcement. And so I had seen the hurdles of having to sell things over and over and over again. Right. And then a lot of what I had done had also been services, right? If you think about retail, you had to make it a great experience, and they had to physically come back to a store in those days to purchase again. So it was a bigger hurdle to the sale. And so what I loved about SaaS was understanding that if you built a relationship and you kept them happy, it was a much easier resell. They just kept buying in month over month because they saw the value. And I love this idea of relationship based, but also focusing on value month over month and keeping customers happy. And so that's what really attracted me into SaaS.
I love that. Okay, so let's pivot a little bit here, because obviously nobody gets to where they are without a few obstacles that we have to overcome, some challenges we have to navigate. When you look back at your career, what were some of the big hurdles you had to overcome or challenges you navigated?
I think the biggest was not having a role model, a mentor who looked like me, who I could talk to. I didn't have anyone where I saw that they were female and young at the time and paving the path specifically in revenue. So I had really chosen sales and wanted to stay in sales. I enjoyed what I did, and I was very good at it, but I knew that I wanted to lead. For me, I liked being an individual contributor, but the second I got my first VP of sales role, I remember I was like, this is what I want to do. I love leading teams. I love kind of helping upskill people. I love seeing other people's success. I get really excited about when people that I'm working with get successful and watching that and growing as a team. I always used to say, we're going to fail together or we're going to win together, but we're doing it as a team. And that's a very different a very different mission than most sales teams have. And there's a lot of sales teams out there that are each individual for themselves, and we're going to let some people fall off and we're going to let other people rise. And so I think that was, a hard thing for me, not having somebody else who had been there, done that with the same mentality that I had, that was in my proximity. And I have since grown such a community around this, but early in my career, I did not have that.
What was the impact of that missing role model? Because you and I talked about this before we hit the record button. And I always share very openly with our listeners, but this is a big part of why I started this podcast, right? Was to amplify the voices of successful women, because we need to be sharing these stories. We need to be talking about it. And we need to also encourage people that surrounding yourself by like-minded individuals or learning from others who have been there is really important to our professional growth and development. So what do you see as kind of the imbalance that you had, maybe professionally or personally, not having that access to that person?
I think the biggest was having a hard time holding on to my femininity and navigating the system. And what I mean by that is,
interesting.
I looked at how everyone else was being successful and found myself acting in the same way, which felt very inauthentic to me. And I had a struggle in figuring out how to balance who I was just as a female leader,
right,
and what the expectations in the boardroom in revenue organizations were, based on the fact that all of my counterparts at the time and everyone around me was male. And you probably know this, Kristi, but I can't say the same thing that a guy can and have it be taken the same way. It comes across very differently. And I have to navigate the world in a different way because of that. And so it was a struggle for me. And I spent a lot of time in my head worried about how I present myself, wearing the black suit and trying to fit into what I saw around me, until I became comfortable enough to understand that the power and the superpowers that I had were also tied not only to me as a revenue leader, but to the fact that I was female, and my intuition and the things that I saw that weren't seen by other leaders in the organization, just because I had a different viewpoint. And that really was made a difference.
So what was the catalyst? Like, when did that switch for you, right? Because I feel like there's a lot of folks who are still navigating that similar path, even with as many female mentors that are out there and people that are making themselves available, and even females in leadership roles, they're still struggling with that. So what was that switch for you, that you recognized that the things that made you unique were your superpowers, and they were going to be the differentiators that would actually make you successful over time?
It was when I got my first VP of sales role. And I'm not going to say that I've been successful at it in every role. It has absolutely been a roller coaster, and it's ebbed and flowed throughout my career. And honestly, I still struggle with it today, if I'm really honest with everyone listening. It's something that I am still working on, which I think is also really impactful, because I can resonate with other women because I'm still working through it. But when I got my first sales role and I realized that I had the opportunity to build a team around me and hire people that were best in class at what they did, but also had the opportunity to bring in people not only that looked like me, but just of all kinds of varieties and diverse backgrounds, and hiring them for their skill set, not what they looked like on paper. I think that was when it first clicked for me, when I realized that being a leader, and then I brought these people in and I said, I can't act like inauthentic because I hired them because of who they were. It feels very counterintuitive for me not to be myself and to show them how that is to navigate this world of tech specifically as a female. And so that was when it really clicked for me, but it definitely has been a struggle.
Do you ever recall any moments where, after you made this identification of yourself, like, this is who I am, these are my strengths, I'm going to lean into it, was there any backlash in any part of, like, it doesn't have to be from a person, but like professionally, did you notice anybody act different? Was there a shift professionally? I mean, anything that you feel like changed when you started to lean into your authentic self?
I think that there was a change in me, but I think the way that other people reacted to me, there were people who didn't understand it and kind of separated. There were people who felt threatened by it. Like, I would say
always
a lot of my career, specifically other women, which is just one of my biggest sadnesses for the world of business, is that other women are threatened by successful women. And I firmly believe in sponsorship and lifting each other up. It's not just supporting each other, but it's really bringing people up with you. And so that's always been a sadness for me. And I saw that a lot. And then I saw people who didn't even bat an eye were like, oh, this is great, and just kind of went along with it. So it really varied, based on the other people's, I think, confidence and how confident they felt in themselves and if they were threatened by that or not. It was interesting to watch it. So it's been something I've just observed my entire career. And I believe that you do have to adjust to different people, obviously working in a team environment and a company and, in an executive leadership team. You have to be aware of how your actions impact other people. I've always tried to walk the fine line of, yes, I'm going to be aware, I'm going to be empathetic, and I'm going to be just observant about how that is impacting people. But still, I have to be me. I think that that's the most important part for women and girls specifically is just showing up as yourself and not trying to be something that you aren't.
I love that. Now, obviously building your team, were you able to bring women onto your team? And then did you decide that you were going to take on any of them as were you going to mentor them and guide them? Was there any intentionality behind how maybe you led the females that you brought onto your team, maybe a little bit differently than your men? Not bad or good, but like just intentionally trying to help groom them the way that maybe you hadn't been.
Absolutely. Yes. I wouldn't think it's fair to say I sought out women, but I definitely paid attention to women that applied. And I am not anti-men by any means, but I did try to give some diversity of voice and experience on my teams. And so that just naturally led to me hiring men, women, people from different backgrounds. I looked more for the personality, the skill set that they possessed and the transferable skills that they had rather than explicit experience, meaning that they were in sales or this exact role before.
Right.
Because people have given me that opportunity. I came out of college and I had never done sales, and somebody said, oh, look, you can do this because you did that. And that's a transferable skill from design to sales. And so I really believe in identifying those transferable skills and leaning in and hiring a holistic person, not based off of a resume. So yes, I absolutely did that. And I was very intentional with thinking about specifically how I coached women on my team different than male. An example of that is, the book, The Challenger Sale?
Yep, I have it over there. I have The Challenger Customer too.
Yes, I do as well. I do as well. They're great, great books. And I think that the principle of it is amazing. But I believe that if you take the book at face value and implement it, it's different for a male versus a female. The things in the book and the way that they're portrayed, it was written from a man's perspective. Yep. And my firm belief is that those methodologies and tactics can very well transfer to females, but they just have to execute them in a different way. And so I often found myself coaching my female team members in just a different way, letting them know how people were seeing them, opening their eyes and just asking questions about how they felt in environments and what they were thinking about, sharing experiences that I had. I really believe in being authentic and sharing what's happened to me. So very openly sharing challenges that I was having and navigating conversations, and what I had heard and what people had said to me, and helping them work through things that they were experiencing in their own life. So I do think that I definitely tapped into that in a different way with intentionality. But I spent just as much time with my male colleagues.
Of course.
As much time coaching them.
It could just be different.
To them different.
Yeah, it's just different. It's just different. All right, awesome. Well, listen, as much time as we could probably spend talking about challenges and things we've overcome, I am a big advocate of celebrating our successes. And I feel like ambitious women do not do that enough because they complete something, they cross that finish line, and they're already got the next set of 5 goals that they're chasing. And so we don't ever look in the rearview mirror. So consider this a forcing function that we are going to sit here and talk about your successes. So when you look back at your career, I'm sure there's a lot of things you're really proud of. What are some of the things that are top of mind for you that when you think back, you're like, okay, 25-year career, I did this. This was things that you celebrate even still today.
Yes, it is. I agree with you. It is hard for women to celebrate, and I just like getting comfortable thinking about it. And I'm really trying to embrace this. So I'm going to acknowledge.
Listen, if this is the hardest part of the conversation, I mean, like, I think we're okay.
One of the things that comes to mind immediately when you said that is I worked for a company called Snap Engage. And Snap Engage was a bootstrap company that had been in Boulder for a very long time. And the two co-founders were ready to tap out. They wanted to have an exit. And I was hired by a wonderful female CEO, Sophia Rosado, who brought me in to lead the revenue organization. And part of that was creating a culture. They had never spent any money on sales or marketing. It had never been a focus. It was a PLG motion, product-led growth motion. Yep. And they just believed they got the customers and they would stay. They never talk to them, in fact. And they had some amazing customers. They didn't even know who their customers were. And so it was a 2.5-year stint of really establishing a customer-centric organization, bringing on a team that supported that, and then finding an exit for them. And we ended up getting acquired by a PE firm and merging into another company called Team Support. The culture changed significantly during this transition. If you can imagine, it came from a very product-focused organization. Mm-hmm. We made it a sales and marketing and customer-centric organization over those 2.5 years. And then we got purchased and all chaos broke loose. There was no culture anymore. No one knew what was going on. There was no plan to integrate the products. It was utter chaos, as a lot of mergers and acquisitions are. But this specifically because there was not a plan. Nobody had sat down and said, this is how we're going to integrate the product. And it felt very haphazard. I was very proud that through that transition, I kept 100% of my team. Nobody was laid off. Nobody quit. I helped people navigate other roles within the organization where I knew they had superpowers that they had not yet identified. And that to me was a huge, huge win for me, that one, I had built a team that was that strong that could make this wild swing transitions. And they all found homes. And so I felt really, really, really proud of that.
I mean, that is a huge success, because having navigated several different M&A situations in my career, to your point, they're messy, they're hard, and not everyone is always on board with going through that journey, right? Because you have to want to be a part of that second chapter. Mm-hmm. So that is something that you should be proud of. Now, obviously, you've also started your own company.
Yes.
So I'm sure that is something that you look back on and making that transition and doing that. So talk to me about that.
You know how you said earlier in the podcast that the universe sometimes pushes you in ways that you don't see and doesn't really give you options. This was kind of one of those no optionality moments.
Okay. Talk to me about it then.
So I thought about it for about 2.5 years. And on the side, I was doing fractional work. I was doing a lot of mentoring, advising. But I was really scared. I was scared of the lack of stability. I was scared that I didn't have enough experience, crazy enough as it is. I have 25 years and I still said, but if I just got one more job, if I just got one more exit, I'll be qualified. So I ended up getting laid off from a role that I was incredibly passionate about, had put, all my time, effort, and energy into, and was very successful at turning a company and a revenue org around. I got laid off very unexpectedly. And when that happened, it was a huge hit. It was actually the first time in my career I'd ever been laid off. I've had a vast amount of roles and have always navigated them seamlessly. And it was meant to come. I've had a 25-year career, and to say this is the first and only time I've been laid off.
Right. Amazing. I feel like it's a rite of passage. Everyone has to go through it once, right? Like, so if you wouldn't have had a career if at some point you weren't let go or laid off. So
Yes. I agree. But it hit hard. It came out of left field and I didn't see it coming. And I support my family. My husband actually had taken 4 or 5 years off to stay home with our 2 young kids.
Oh, I love that. I hope my husband doesn't take any notes here. He's our number one listener, and he's been asking our whole lives if he could just be a stay-at-home dad. So Anthony, if you're listening, the answer is still no.
Anthony, if you want some reasons why you shouldn't, I'm happy to tell you that too. So look me up. I'm happy to have a chat. So is my husband. So he took some time off, and it was amazing that he could support our family in that way, and necessary given things that were going on in our family and the support we needed and where my career was. But he was just getting back into work and had just transitioned back into a W-2 role, but it was a really small company. They didn't have health insurance. I had really the financial security, the health insurance for our family. So this came out of left field, and it was sudden, and it was not kind in the way that it was done. And it really, really hit me hard. It shook my confidence. It also, so I immediately jumped into interviewing. I said, I'm going to get back on that horse. Right. I'm going to find my next role. Had a lot of great job offers. I could not pull the trigger on any of them. Every single one that came up, I thought, oh, I just don't know. I'm not sure that I'm ready to do this again. The whole time my husband's in the background, he's a huge supporter of me and fulfilling dreams. And he knew this is something I always wanted to do. I just had a huge passion for helping others and having more impact, being able to help more companies and help more people out there. And so he kept saying, I think you should do it. I think you should do it. And I kept coming up with reasons that I shouldn't. And finally, I just recognized that nothing was quite working out in the way. The stars weren't aligning. The jobs weren't exactly what I was looking for. And finally, I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do it. I had a friend who came to me and said, I'm looking for a partner in this business that I'm running. Would you be interested? And that was my initial leap. And then just earlier this year, I took the leap to my full-fledged, my own entity called Purl Advisors. It was the scariest thing I've ever done, but I've realized that I'm stronger than I ever thought I was possible. I have more knowledge than I ever knew I had, and that really all I need to know is 10% more than somebody else to really impactfully help them in a meaningful way. So those have been some big ahas for me personally.
I feel like I am listening to a future state of myself because I'm like your journey when you were like the 2 years of thinking and kind of a little bit of the toe in the water and planning, but very risk adverse. So I feel like I'm using this as a personal pep talk, and I'm kind of listening to your story and I'm thinking, my time will come soon. All right. Well, I love that story for you. Now, you know something else that I'm super passionate about, and we've already talked about this when we kind of highlighted some of the things that you're most proud of, but I love the saying that empowered women empower women. And so I know that this has obviously been a theme that you've woven into your leadership career and obviously the work that you do. But I also know that you do a lot of things outside of your job that help facilitate the empowerment of women. And so what are some of the things that you're doing out there in the community?
One of the things that I'm most passionate about that I'm involved in is Women in Sales. And it's the organization that I wish I had in my younger self. Like if I could go back 15, 20 years and put this together, this would have been my vision. And Alexine Madouar has created a community of 35 individuals around the globe that support the mission of empowering women in revenue. And that could be sales in the common sense or customer success or anything customer facing. And I'm head of events for that organization. So I have the pleasure of creating unique, authentic experiences to bring women together in a way that allows them to connect from each other, to sponsor each other, to lift each other up. And to see around the corners and give those little pep talks that you just talked about, Kristi, to each other in a way where they understand what it's like to navigate the world as a female, as a mother, oftentimes as an executive. And the thing I love about this organization is it is not isolated just to leaders. It is actually equally diverse between early career, mid-career, and later in career as far as seniority is concerned. And so it's one of the few organizations out there that the entire spectrum is represented, and you can really reach down and help other people lift them up that are just starting out, that are thinking about a career in sales or just getting their first SDR role, as an example.
I love that. How long have you been involved with the organization?
I've been involved about 3 years. The organization's been around, I'm going to say 4 or 5 years. Okay. And it came on my radar as I was looking for ways to give back in event. And, originally I was just a bystander and kind of a stalker in the Slack channel, just watching the conversations. And then I put myself out there and attended an event. And it was after I attended an event that I realized, oh my goodness, this is an incredibly powerful community. And there's something about being in the same room physically or virtually with other women who have experienced similar things and have different perspectives that is so empowering and so needed in my life. And I just think in the world at large. So I'm very passionate about that. The other thing that I'm really involved in is Techstars, which is the largest pre-seed accelerator in the world. And it is all about helping founders start their passion, fueling their business, and giving them an incredibly strong foundation to grow their business and contribute their vision, ideas, and expertise into the world. So I've been a mentor for them for years on a volunteer basis. I'm an all-star mentor, which is the top 1% of mentors in the world. And then I had the opportunity to plug into the program team and work on the program team for the last 13 weeks in Denver with the Denver Workforce Development Program, where I'm really proud to say that 6 of the 11 companies that went through that program had female founders, which is just absolutely unheard of. So that was a real pleasure.
Like literally not the statistic I was prepared for.
Nope. And you know this, about 2% of all funding over the last 30 years has gone to females.
And I hear that it's going down, not going up, which is sad.
Yeah, unfortunately. So I love the mission of the organization. I absolutely adore being involved in it and seeing that and supporting those founders through the journey of the last 13 weeks has truly been life-changing for me. Really enjoyed that process.
I love that. I feel like they're all very lucky to have you and all your support. Okay. So something else that comes up a lot, and I hear from just women all the time, and everyone's at different stages, different seasons, I like to describe, but we all know that if you're managing this business of yours and you have a home life and you have your own hobbies and all you have the things that make you, that balance becomes very difficult. When you think about balancing your role, your personal life, your family, things that are important to you, how do you make that work in your life?
Working from home has been a huge benefit for me in this area.
Yeah.
When I was gone 12 hours a day and having to commute and be in an office, I would say, honestly, it was much harder to balance, but it was easier to unplug. I don't
that's
really,
fair. Yep.
Yeah, I don't really know that there's such a thing as balancing. If I'm honest, there is always one thing that is getting more of my time. It's never an equal balance. However, I believe that there are 3 or 4 things that you balance, right? There's your family, there's your friends, there's your career, and then there's just taking care of yourself, self-care, education, whatever that might look like, spa days, whatever it looks like to you, yoga, whatever it is. And so those are the 4 things, and I think of them as levers. And at any point in time, they're never going to be equal. They're never going to be 25, 25, 25. But I am at least aware and cognizant of where my time is being spent. And I try really hard to do it with intention. So right now, as an instance, I'm building a business. I'm building a new business, considering I'm just transitioned. So a lot of my time is going to building my business and I'm intentional with that, but I'm still here when my kids walk in the door from camp or from school. Every time that they say, hey, can we play a board game? I say yes. I just try with intentionality to say yes to opportunities to spend time with them and be present. And then I also think really clearly about my calendar. Where can I carve out time that is non-negotiable for myself or my family or my friends, and making that a priority, because I find if I don't schedule it in, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah. That's so your sentiment is shared. I think almost every single one of my guests would share the same sentiment, that there is no such thing as balance. There is just the ability to prioritize, and at different times in our lives, different things take front seat. But I do think that your 4 pillars make a ton of sense. And I love how you are very intentional about managing them, balancing them to the extent that you can. So I love that. All right. Well, listen, we are getting to the end of our episode, and I want to be cognizant of that. So as you think about things, and we leave our listeners with some piece of advice here, what do you want to leave with them? What do you want them to take away from your story and your experiences that you think would help benefit them as they're embarking on their own journeys?
Don't wait for somebody to enable you or empower you. You have everything that you need inside of you, no matter where you are on your journey. And if you don't feel that you do, reach out to someone who can tell you how amazing you are and support you and reflect back what they see to you. Because holding up that mirror is sometimes the hardest thing. And I think a lot of people in this world don't recognize the impact, the power, the amazingness that they are. And so just know that you can do it, and that you have everything that you already need. However, there are people to support you out there, and community is one of the most important things. So seeking out those opportunities proactively rather than reactively or waiting for someone to invite you, I think is incredibly important. It's amazing how much you'll learn just from being in community with people that are maybe one step ahead, 10% further along than you are.
I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, your experiences with our audience and our listeners today, Shannon. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm glad. All right. Well, for you listeners, if you are still with us, and I certainly hope that you are, if you enjoyed this episode, please rate and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, subscribe on YouTube, connect with us on LinkedIn. And until next time, we'll see you soon.
Hi guys, I want to share a bit about an organization that I support called Wednesday Women. They're on a mission to increase the visibility of executive women leaders that you should know, learn from, and be inspired by. On LinkedIn, they share the profile of 2 amazing women each week, on Wednesdays of course. And now just imagine if we all followed, amplified, and nominated the women that we want to see more of. Their initiative provides examples of women CEOs, founders, sales executives, technical leaders, and so many more. By supporting Wednesday Women, you'll see more of these professionals in your social feeds, of course, but also on stages, podcasts, and panels. If you're interested in learning more and supporting their initiative, head over to www.wednesdaywomen.org or follow them on LinkedIn.